The rain had been falling over New York City since morning. Not the soft romantic rain people wrote poems about. This rain was cold, relentless, the kind that made the city feel lonely. Emma Carter stood outside a tall glass building in Manhattan, clutching a thin folder to her chest. Her fingers were trembling, not because of the rain, because of what she was about to do. She looked up at the towering building. 42 floors of steel and glass. At the top of that building worked the man who once promised to love her forever. Daniel Hayes, CEO of Hayes International. Billionaire, powerful, cold, and the man who once broke her heart. Emma slowly took a breath. Just 5 minutes, she whispered to herself. I only need 5 minutes. The security guard inside the lobby looked at her suspiciously when she walked in. Her coat was wet, her shoes were cheap, and she clearly didn't belong in a place like this. Can I help you? The guard asked. Emma forced a polite smile. I'm here to see Mr. Hayes. The guard laughed lightly. Join the line. There are about 200 people who want to see him. Emma swallowed. I'm not here for business. I just need to talk to him. The guard shook his head. Without an appointment? Impossible. Emma lowered her eyes. Of course. Why would Daniel Hayes meet someone like her now? 5 years ago, things were different. 5 years ago, he was just Daniel, a poor college student with big dreams. And she was the girl who believed in him. But people change. Money changes people faster. Emma turned slowly toward the door. Maybe this had been a mistake. Maybe she should leave. Maybe. Emma? The voice froze her in place. She turned slowly. And there he was. Daniel Hayes. Standing in the lobby. Tall. Perfectly dressed in a dark suit. His sharp gray eyes staring directly at her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. 5 years of memories hung silently between them. Emma's heart began pounding painfully. He looked different. Colder. More distant. But still the same man she once loved. Daniel's expression slowly hardened. Well, he said flatly. This is unexpected. Emma forced a small smile. Hi, Daniel. The way she said his name made something flicker briefly in his eyes. But it disappeared quickly. What are you doing here? He asked. His tone wasn't warm. It wasn't even curious. It sounded annoyed. Emma felt a small crack inside her chest. I needed to talk to you. Daniel checked his expensive watch. You have 30 seconds. 30 seconds. 5 years ago, he used to talk to her for hours. Now she had 30 seconds. Emma opened the folder in her hands. Her fingers trembled as she handed him the papers. I need your signature. Daniel glanced at the document. Then his eyebrows slowly tightened. Divorce papers. He looked back at her. Cold. Sharp. Now you remember you're my wife? The words hit harder than she expected. Emma lowered her eyes. 5 years ago, they had gotten married secretly. A poor student and a waitress. 2 people against the world. But on the day Daniel's company finally became successful, he disappeared. No calls. No messages. Nothing. Until today. Daniel flipped through the papers lazily. So you came all the way here, he said slowly. Just for a divorce? Emma nodded quietly. Yes. Daniel stared at her face. Her pale skin. Her tired eyes. Something about her looked fragile. Different from the bright girl he remembered. Why now? He asked. Emma hesitated. Because the truth was something she didn't want him to know. But Daniel stepped closer. His voice colder. Or, did you finally find a richer man? Emma's head snapped up. That's not fair. Daniel smirked slightly. Fair. You disappeared for 5 years. And now you show up asking for my signature. What do you expect me to think? Emma's hands clenched. I waited. Daniel's expression froze slightly. What? I waited for you, Emma repeated softly. For 5 years. Silence fell between them. For the first time, Daniel didn't have a quick response. But instead of softening, his eyes turned colder. That was your choice. Emma felt tears sting her eyes, but she forced them back. I'm not here to argue. I just need your signature. Daniel studied her face for a long moment. Then suddenly, he tore the papers in half. Emma gasped. What are you doing? Daniel dropped the pieces of paper onto the marble floor. His voice calm. You want a divorce? Fine, but not that easily. Emma stared at him in disbelief. What does that mean? Daniel leaned slightly closer. His voice low. If you want out of this marriage, you'll work for me. Emma blinked. What?
1 year, Daniel said.
You become my personal assistant. After 1 year, I'll sign the divorce papers. Emma's heart pounded. Why would you do that? Daniel's lips curved slightly, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. Let's just say, I'm curious to see what kind of woman waits 5 years for a man who never came back. Emma's chest tightened, but she had no choice, because what Daniel didn't know was that she needed the divorce urgently. Before he discovered the truth she had been hiding, Emma slowly lifted her eyes. Fine. Daniel's gaze darkened. Good. Neither of them realized that this decision was about to destroy both their lives. The next morning, Emma Carter stood in front of the massive glass building again. But this time, she wasn't here as a visitor. She was here as an employee. Daniel Hayes' personal assistant. Emma looked up at the towering building and took a deep breath. Just 1 year, she whispered to herself. 1 year, and I'm free. But something deep inside her chest felt heavy. Because working for Daniel meant seeing him every single day. The man she once loved. The man who abandoned her. The man who now looked at her like she meant nothing. Emma stepped inside the lobby. The same security guard from yesterday looked at her again. His expression changed when he saw the ID badge around her neck. Wait, you work here now? Emma nodded politely. Yes. The guard scratched his head in confusion. Mr. Hayes' personal assistant? Emma forced a small smile. Yes. The guard stared at her like she had just said she worked on the moon. Because everyone in the company knew something. Daniel Hayes never kept assistants for long. Most of them quit within 2 weeks. Some even cried in the elevator before leaving. Emma took the elevator to the top floor. Floor 42. The doors opened to a silent and luxurious office floor. Marble floors, glass walls, a breathtaking view of Manhattan, and the cold atmosphere of power. The receptionist looked at her. You must be Emma. Emma nodded. Yes. The receptionist sighed. Good luck. Emma blinked. Thank you. Before she could ask what that meant, a deep voice came from behind her. She won't need luck. Emma turned. Daniel Hayes was standing there, wearing a black suit that looked like it cost more than her entire wardrobe. His expression was calm, cold, professional, like yesterday's conversation meant nothing.
Follow me, he said.
Emma followed him into his massive office. The room looked like something from a movie. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a huge dark wood desk, and a city view that looked like the entire world belonged to him. Daniel sat down and looked at her. So, Emma stood quietly. Daniel leaned back in his chair. Rule number 1. You don't call me Daniel here. Emma nodded. Mr. Hayes. Good. Rule number 2, he continued. You do exactly what I say. No questions. Emma nodded again. Understood. Daniel watched her carefully. She looked thinner than he remembered. Her eyes looked tired, but she still had that stubborn calm expression. It irritated him. You start now, he said. He slid a thick stack of documents across the desk. Review these contracts. Emma looked at the stack. There were hundreds of pages. When do you need them finished? She asked. Daniel glanced at the clock. It's 9 a.m. Give me the summary by noon. Emma blinked. That's impossible. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Are you refusing your first task? Emma clenched her hands. No. Good. Daniel looked back at his laptop. You can use the desk outside. Emma picked up the stack of papers. They were heavier than they looked. As she turned to leave, Daniel suddenly spoke again.
Oh.
Emma stopped. Yes. Daniel's voice was calm. If you fail, your 1-year contract starts over. Emma froze. You're joking. Daniel looked up slowly. Do I look like I'm joking? Emma's chest tightened. This man, he wasn't just testing her. He was punishing her for something she didn't even understand. But Emma didn't argue. She walked out quietly and sat at the desk outside his office. The receptionist leaned closer and whispered, "Are you okay?" Emma smiled faintly. "I will be." But inside, her body already felt weak. The papers blurred slightly as she started reading. She rubbed her eyes. "Focus," she whispered. But 30 minutes later, a sudden wave of dizziness hit her. Emma gripped the desk. Her breathing became heavier. "Not now. Please not now." She quickly reached into her bag and took a small bottle of pills. She swallowed one without water. After a few minutes, her breathing slowly stabilized. Emma closed her eyes briefly. "Just survive 1 year," she whispered. "Just 1 year." Inside his office, Daniel Hayes stood near the glass window, watching her through the transparent wall. His expression unreadable, because something about Emma felt wrong. 5 years ago, she had been full of life. Now, she looked like someone carrying a heavy secret. Daniel narrowed his eyes. "What are you hiding, Emma?" But before he could think further, the elevator doors opened loudly. A woman walked in confidently.
Tall.
Beautiful. Dressed like a fashion magazine model. Sophia Loren, Daniel's fiancée. She stopped when she saw Emma. Her sharp eyes scanned her from head to toe. "Who is she?" The receptionist answered nervously. "Mr. Hayes' new assistant." Sophia slowly walked closer to Emma. Emma stood politely. "Hello." Sophia tilted her head slightly, her lips forming a faint smile, but her eyes were cold. "Interesting." Then she walked straight into Daniel's office without knocking. The door closed behind her. Inside the office, Sophia crossed her arms. "You hired a woman?" Daniel didn't look up from his laptop. "Yes." "You hate female assistants." Daniel's voice was calm. She insisted. Sophia narrowed her eyes. "Who is she?" Daniel finally looked up, and for a brief second, his eyes flickered toward Emma outside the glass wall. No one important, but something about the way he said it made Sophia suspicious. Very suspicious. And outside the office, Emma suddenly coughed into her hand. When she pulled it away, there was a small drop of blood. Her face turned pale, because the illness she had been hiding for years was getting worse. And if Daniel discovered the truth, everything would change. Inside Daniel's office, Sophia Loren leaned against the desk, her arms crossed. She watched Daniel carefully. "You didn't answer my question," she said calmly. Daniel didn't look up from his laptop. "What question?" Sophia's eyes narrowed slightly. "Who is she?" Daniel finally closed the laptop and looked at her. "An assistant." Sophia laughed softly. "You expect me to believe that?" Daniel's voice turned colder. "You don't need to believe anything." Sophia stepped closer to the glass wall. From here she could clearly see Emma sitting outside, buried under a mountain of documents. Emma looked pale, tired, but she kept working. Sophia studied her carefully. "She doesn't look like the type you hire." Daniel didn't respond. Sophia glanced back at him. Poor background. Cheap clothes. Looks exhausted. Then she smiled slightly. "So why her?" Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. "She asked for a job." "And you just gave it to her?" Sophia asked. Daniel's voice turned flat. She insisted. Sophia studied his face. Something about his reaction felt strange. Daniel Hayes never did anything without a reason. Never. Sophia suddenly walked out of the office. Her heels echoed across the marble floor. Emma looked up when Sophia stopped in front of her desk. Sophia smiled politely, but the smile felt dangerous. "You're Emma, right?" Emma stood up. "Yes." Sophia tilted her head slightly. "I'm Sophia." Emma nodded. "I know." Sophia looked around the desk. Hundreds of pages. Contracts. Financial reports. Then she picked up one document. "You're reviewing all this?" "Yes." "By noon?" Sophia asked. Emma nodded quietly. Sophia laughed. "That's impossible." Emma didn't answer. Sophia leaned slightly closer. "You know something?" Emma stayed silent. "You won't last a week here." Emma calmly replied. "I only need a year." Sophia raised an eyebrow. "A year?" "Yes." Emma returned her attention to the papers. Sophia studied her face carefully. There was something strange about this woman. She didn't look afraid. She didn't look desperate. She looked determined. Sophia didn't like that. Not at all. Good luck then, she said coldly, and walked back into Daniel's office. 2 hours later, Emma's vision began to blur again. Her fingers trembled slightly as she flipped through another contract. Her chest felt tight. Breathing became harder. She tried to ignore it, but the words on the page started swimming. Suddenly, her pen slipped from her hand. It rolled across the desk and fell onto the floor. Emma leaned down to pick it up, but when she stood again, the room spun violently. She grabbed the desk to stay upright. "No," she whispered. "Not here. Not now." Inside the office, Daniel noticed something. Through the glass wall, he saw Emma gripping the desk. Her face looked white. For a second, he frowned. But before he could move, Emma collapsed. The sound of her body hitting the floor echoed across the office. "Emma," the receptionist shouted. Daniel was already on his feet. He rushed out of his office. Emma lay on the floor unconscious. Her hair spread across the marble tiles. Her breathing shallow. Daniel knelt beside her, his heart suddenly racing. "Emma," he shook her shoulder lightly. No response. Sophia stood nearby, watching silently. Daniel picked Emma up into his arms. She felt frighteningly light. "Call an ambulance," he ordered sharply. The receptionist grabbed the phone immediately. Sophia frowned slightly. "Is that necessary?" Daniel's eyes snapped toward her. "Yes." His voice was colder than ice. Minutes later, the ambulance arrived. At the hospital, doctors rushed Emma into the emergency room. Daniel stood outside the room. His hands clenched. He didn't understand why he felt this way. 5 years ago, she had disappeared. Without explanation. Without goodbye. And yet, seeing her collapse like that made something twist painfully inside him. Sophia walked toward him. "You're overreacting," she said calmly. Daniel didn't respond. She probably fainted from stress. Still no response. Sophia crossed her arms. "You barely know this woman." Daniel's voice was low. "I know enough." Sophia's eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" Before Daniel could answer, the doctor walked out of the room. Daniel immediately stepped forward. "How is she?" The doctor looked at him seriously. "Are you family?" Daniel hesitated for half a second. Then he answered, "Yes." The doctor sighed. "Her condition is complicated." Daniel's chest tightened. "What condition?" The doctor glanced down at the medical chart. "Severe kidney failure." Daniel froze. "What?" The doctor continued. "She has advanced uremia." The word hit Daniel like a shockwave. She should have been receiving regular treatment. But according to her records, she stopped treatment almost a year ago. Daniel's mind went blank. "Why would she do that?" he whispered. The doctor shook his head. "I don't know. But if she continues like this, her life could be in serious danger." Daniel slowly turned toward the hospital room window. Emma lay unconscious inside, her face pale against the white pillow. 5 years ago, she had been the brightest person he knew. Always laughing. Always smiling. Now, she looked fragile. Broken. Daniel felt something heavy press against his chest. And for the first time in years, a terrible thought crossed his mind. What if Emma didn't come back to him for money? What if she came back because she was running out of time? The hospital corridor was quiet. Too quiet. Daniel Hayes stood near the large glass window outside Emma's hospital room. Inside, Emma lay unconscious on the bed. Her skin looked pale under the white lights. Machines beside her made soft rhythmic sounds. Beep, beep, beep. Daniel had faced billion-dollar business battles without hesitation. But right now, standing here felt strangely difficult. Behind him, Sophia Loren crossed her arms impatiently. "This is ridiculous," she said. Daniel didn't respond. Sophia sighed loudly. "She fainted. People faint all the time." Still no response. Sophia stepped closer. "You canceled 3 meetings for this." Daniel finally spoke. "Go home, Sophia." She blinked. "What?" "Go home," he repeated calmly. Sophia stared at him in disbelief. "You're staying here?" "Yes." Her expression hardened. For an assistant? Daniel slowly turned toward her, his voice quiet but sharp. Do you have a problem with that? Sophia looked at him for several seconds. Then she laughed softly.
No.
But her eyes were cold. Very cold. Stay then, she said. She grabbed her handbag and walked away down the hallway. Her heels echoed angrily against the floor. When she disappeared around the corner, the corridor became silent again. Daniel slowly sat down. Hours passed. Night fell outside the hospital windows. Finally, a nurse stepped out of Emma's room. She's waking up, the nurse said. Daniel stood up immediately. Inside the room, Emma's eyes slowly opened. The bright lights made her blink weakly. Her throat felt dry. Her body felt heavy. The last thing she remembered was sitting at the office desk. Then everything went dark. Where am I? She whispered. Hospital. Emma's heart skipped. She turned her head. Daniel Hayes was standing beside the bed, his expression serious. Emma tried to sit up quickly, but Daniel stopped her. Don't. You're weak. Emma's breathing became uneven. What happened? You collapsed. Emma closed her eyes briefly. Of course. She had pushed her body too far again. Daniel watched her carefully. You have uremia. Emma froze. Her fingers tightened around the blanket. How do you know that? The doctor told me. Emma turned her face away. For several seconds she didn't speak. Then quietly she said something unexpected. Please don't tell anyone. Daniel frowned.
What?
Emma looked at him again, her eyes serious. Please, don't tell anyone about my illness. Daniel stared at her like she had just said something insane. You're seriously ill. You need treatment. Emma shook her head slightly. I know. Then why would you hide it? Daniel demanded. Emma looked down. I just need 1 year. Daniel's voice rose slightly. 1 year for what? Emma didn't answer. Her silence made his frustration grow. You disappear for 5 years. You suddenly come back asking for divorce. You collapse in my office. And now you're telling me to ignore the fact that you're dying? Emma whispered quietly. I'm not dying. Daniel's jaw tightened. The doctor said your condition is dangerous. Emma forced a weak smile. I've lived with it for years. That's not the point. His voice echoed slightly in the room. Emma looked at him calmly. For me it is. Daniel stared at her. Something about her calmness made him uncomfortable. Why do you need a divorce so urgently? He asked. Emma hesitated. I just do. That's not an answer. Emma slowly turned her face toward the window. The city lights outside sparkled in the darkness. 5 years ago, she had dreamed of living in that city with Daniel. Back then, everything had seemed possible, but life had changed. Daniel, she said softly. He didn't respond to the name correction. She continued. Just sign the divorce after 1 year. That's all I'm asking. Daniel stepped closer to the bed. Why? Emma looked back at him. For a moment her eyes looked almost sad. Because after that, she stopped speaking. Daniel frowned. After that what? Emma shook her head. Nothing. Daniel's patience snapped. You think I'm stupid? Emma sighed softly. No. But some things are better left alone. The room fell silent. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Then suddenly he said something that shocked her. I'll investigate. Emma's eyes widened. What? I'll find out what happened 5 years ago. Her face went pale. You don't need to do that. I disagree, Daniel said calmly. Emma's heart began racing. Because if Daniel started investigating, he would discover the truth she had hidden for 5 years. Please don't, she said quietly. Daniel stared at her. For someone who wants a divorce, you're very afraid of the past. Emma didn't respond, but inside her chest, fear slowly spread. Because the truth was something Daniel would never forgive. 5 years ago, Emma hadn't left him willingly. She had been forced to disappear by someone powerful, someone dangerous, someone who still hadn't finished with her yet. And very soon, that person would return.